to Cameron Grimes, our special secret new exciting guest that just arrived, Max Taylor Kloss, Jill Bennett, and Katie O'Brien. Oh, every year these chairs get harder to get into. Thank you all so much for being here. It's so great to have you. My first question that I wanted to ask, that I usually do ask on this panel, is how have you seen the industry change in regards to your treatment as an actor and also the roles that you are seeing come up since the beginning of your career until now, both positive and negative, and like we don't need to sugarcoat here on this panel. So let's start with Katie.
Oh, okay. I'm ready to go. I think, I haven't been in for a really long time. I've only been in about 6 years. But even in that amount of time, it's the change that I've seen is that roles that I can go out for now aren't exclusive to my sexuality, because I have really short hair and people put a label on that. So that's something that I have seen, but it is also interesting too. I think this is like the first time I've booked a role that is actually a queer role as well, because I think oftentimes, from what I see at least, is like a romantic lead, something like that, is reserved typically for a more feminine look. So still something to work on, I think, there. But for me, I'm starting to see that I'm actually being brought in for things that are more universal and broader.
That's awesome. Bags.
It's changed a lot. I went from playing queer-coded characters to blatantly queer characters. And I think the weirdest part was starting to see auditions saying Bex Taylor Klaus type. And then I wouldn't book the role.
I was going to say, what is it like to go out for your own type and not book her?
It has happened so many times and I don't understand it. It's fine. I'm fine. But yeah, I went from playing these queer-coded characters that if they were written this year, they'd be like non-binary, they, them, or any sort of blatantly queer. And now it started with Scream, and that was such a huge moment of playing a bisexual character on any sort of show that was streaming, airing, anything. And now it's like, oh yeah, no, we've got a lot. We got more. It's not weird to have a bi-curious character. It's weird to not have a queer character somewhere in here. Even if they're in like a side character, they're at least portraying that we're real. And from something that was so just, you don't exist for so many years, to being, there's at least one of you. Even though we do travel in packs, and we still don't have a show that shows that yet. Like, I've never met a friend group with one queer. I've met a friend group with one straight person.
Well, yeah, legally we need to have one.
Yeah, we need a token. So that's what I want the next step to be, is like a gaggle of queers in one show.
Jill, what about you?
Well, as the resident OG up here, I've been in the industry for 27 years now, and I can say unequivocally things are completely different from when I was doing mainstream media. I definitely lost roles for being openly gay. To see how the queer community has been, believe me, I could go on for hours about this. We have a long way to go, but in terms of casting, it's a completely different world. Not only did I not get parts like straight roles because I was openly gay, I didn't get gay roles because I was gay. So things have definitely changed, and it's so exciting to see it. It sucks that I'm now 47 and this is happening, but that's Hollywood. That's how it goes. There was a time, when I got so frustrated that I decided to definitely, you're adorable for doing this. It's a be real, of course.
I never make it on time, I have to.
I got so frustrated with mainstream media that I started doing my own projects, because that was the only option that I had to play, full characters. So back in like 2005 when you guys were children. I started creating my own content, and you know, the lesbian web series, I was in a gazillion of them. It was fabulous. We created a community, and now it's fantastic to see, you know, full characters, full queer people on mainstream TV. And killing it, frankly, or being killed in many cases.
We're gonna get to
by
that.
the network. And I'm almost done, but to see like A League of Their Own, which I'm a massive fan, to see how fucking gay that show is, and how good it is, and that like there's so many queer people involved in it. Like this was the dream that I had in 2005. So it's lovely to see it, to see it happening now.
Yeah, I mean, you beat me by...
It is not easy. It's still not easy in 2022 to be a queer, non-binary, trans person in this industry. So they deserve every ounce of respect that they can get here.
I mean, you beat me by 2 years. I've been in the industry for 25 years, and I think being on a soap opera, it's extremely different. Although, you know, being born and raised in Los Angeles, and being on a soap at such a young age, I was essentially raised by gay men. But that it didn't come across, I mean, we have a long way to go still. I mean, on my show, I'm the first queer character, and we just had our first gay marriage, you know, and yeah. You know, when the audience is different, it can move a lot slower. So to even accomplish that was like huge. But I think the wonderful thing is that it's brought so many new people into the show. It's brought so many young, you know, queer people into the audience, and that is definitely changing the canvas of soap operas themselves. I mean, there is a lot of work to do, but you know, hopefully by bringing in that new audience, we're keeping it alive enough to have the opportunity to do that. So.
I love doing these panels so much. It's just such a cool insight into, I mean, as fans, we watch things from the outside and we feel like we're part of things, but you are actually like there. You're experiencing this firsthand, and it's just so good to talk to all of you about this. And Bex, I feel like I've watched you grow up on television.
Just a little.
I remember being very struck by your character Bullet on The Killing. I loved that show, loved that character. How have you navigated being a non-binary actor in an industry that is very, very rooted in the binary?
I like this question because I hate it. It's a really good question because I haven't always known what to do. Like when I first started in this industry, I was told, I mean, if you are gay, just don't be. Just don't tell people you are. Just like you won't. The same sort of thing. I was warned that if I came out, I would lose my career.
And this is still like, but 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years ago.
This was 10 years ago. And I was, you know, still going through my internal trauma of like suppressing my sexuality and my gender and absolutely anything that could be a wrench in my career. And it was miserable. And by the time I was on Scream, it made me physically ill because I was playing a queer character while I was so deeply, deeply in the closet. And at that point, it was mostly because of my career. Like I was ready, I wanted to come out, and I kept being told by people who I perceived that they had a better idea of what was good for me than I did. I was wrong. But that's how I felt, and I was young, and I was young in this industry that doesn't really protect actors, especially not young actors, and so I was really struggling and trying to get through it and trying to navigate it alone. And when I finally came out, or started the process of coming out, some of my health issues started to go away, because it was, the stress was taking this massive toll on my body. And it's hard to shoot a TV show when you're physically just feeling like you're dying, even if you're not. It's so hard. But we got through it, and everything started easing up when I started kind of learning that that I needed to be honest with myself, if not the world. And I realized that I was in this unique position where I was given a platform. And I wasn't ready for it. I didn't feel ready for it, but I had it. And I sort of felt the obligation to let everybody else sort of into my process because I'd never seen it. I remember reaching out to River Butcher being like, hey, how do I come out? Like, did your reps ever tell you not to? And they were like, he lucked out. Let's be honest, River all the way through, their reps were always like, this is who you are, this is how we'll bill you, and if this changes, we'll bill you differently and we'll keep working. And it's been really nice. I didn't have that when I was young, and so I never got a chance to build from there. So I had a different track, and I'd never seen anyone do that successfully. Like, I started that process before Elliot even came out as queer, much less genderqueer. And I remember being like, people referring to me as like the queer E page and being like, I think E's probably queer. But like, I think I lost track of the question.
Well, so, no, you were totally on point, and I'm curious if you'll feel comfortable answering this. When you did come out, how did your reps or your people respond to that?
I kind of didn't take the phone call. I kind of was like, yeah. MTV, it was after the Pulse shooting, and I was really freaking out. And I remember reaching out to MTV and saying, hey, you guys know that this is something that I've been hiding, because I came out to MTV being like, hey, this is like after I'd already been cast, and I was like, during the publicity tour and everything. It was a whole thing. And so I reached out to them, this was during season 2, and I reached out and I said, hey, can I do a live so I can talk to other queer kids about how we're feeling about this? And they let me, and that felt huge. I think it was huge at the time, because that live is where I first started coming out to the public, to people, to the fan base, to anybody who wasn't my group of people.
I remember when that happened. That was impactful, and I'm so glad that you did that.
And I did get a phone call that I ignored. And then it was just from there, it was just, this is where we are now, and this is where we'll move from here.
Thank you. Thank you on behalf of us.
Well, Katie, you are, like you said, you're still kind of new, a newbie. I mean, 6 years is a good amount of time, but still. So I'd love to get your perspective on this sort of stuff. It's awesome to see you rocking these genre shows. And it feels like, you know, sci-fi, fantasy, a little bit more welcoming place for queer and trans actors. Do you find that to be the case? Because we're seeing you on Mandalorian, Black Lightning, Westworld, I mean, all these huge genre shows. I'd love to get your perspective. So cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, like, for Black Lightning, for instance, I did have somebody come up and mention, like, you know, you're the only, like, visibly queer character on this show, and they made you a villain. So I was like, good, points were made. And then, you know, with Star Wars and just Marvel in general, you're kind of like, okay, well, I'm coded, but you're not showing this because you still want to market to Disney and whatever, you know. So it's at least good that you're getting the visibility. I do have people come up and say, like, you know, you've inspired me to help work with, and I'm not trans, but like my trans daughter came out to me because of your character, or my daughter came out as bisexual or whatever because of your character. And they use your character as an example, like, hey, do you see this person on, you know, Z Nation or whatever? I'm like that. And you're like, what do you mean? Like, well, let's start a dialogue. So it's like, it's a cool position to be in, because sci-fi it's one of those, like, those genres where, you know, anybody can see themselves.
Right.
Yeah, I'm really into, like, comics, and there's this whole, like, series of interpreting comics and stuff where, like, you know, if you're wearing a mask, or if you're you have these powers, you're starting to see people who are outside the realm of quote unquote normal, or what is like usual to see. And then you start to see yourself more in these characters. So I feel like that's where sci-fi opens that realm for people, which is why it tends to be more accepting, and we're exploring new worlds, new people, literally new nations, new whatever.
Frontiers.
New frontiers. And it allows us to open that dialogue, and hopefully teaches you to learn to be more accepting of things that aren't what you see every day, or what you're maybe familiar with in your small community. So yeah, I mean, I think that's what sci-fi is good for, right? Like, that's why we watch it. It's like, it's exciting, it's new, and it's like, it's more inclusive. I think they're trying to do better. There's still a way to go.
There's actually a Netflix, or a documentary, I think, hitting Netflix. Could be wrong, but it's a documentary called Queer for Fear. Yeah. It aired the first episode at Outfest, and I'm in one of the episodes, I don't know. But it's about the connection with queerness and horror genre, and a lot like what you were just saying with sci-fi. It's like, everybody can die. It doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, anything else, everybody dies.
Oh, yeah. There's a difference if you're dying because you're queer or trans or bi.
Or if you're dying because there's a sociopath in the woods.
Right. Actually, so let's hold that, because I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh, sorry.
No. I have a whole question about villains and about Bury Your Gay. So hold please on that. Jill, self-proclaimed Ochi of the crew. You have been. I want you to understand what a trailblazer in queer media Jill Bennett has been. You have been creating and involved in creating queer content for many years. Why was it so important for you to provide this kind of content to your community?
Because, well, let's go back to where it really started for me, which was after Ellen. I had roles, and I had done some film and mainstream television, but it was in that community where it became so obvious how starved our community was for people that were like them, right? These stupid video blogs that became so big. We're on a couch, reviewing South of Nowhere in the L Word with fucking sock puppets, and people are like millions of views, and this is like pre-YouTubers making millions. Again, I was doing all this before it became monetized. Not bitter. And just to see the community that was created and how much people were like rallying around it, and I was like, God damn, we're starved, and we did a meetup in New York or something. I think we were expecting like 10 people to show up. There were fucking hundreds of people there, and I was like,
you all were mobbed.
Yeah, it was complete insanity, and I was like, okay. And then, logo, I got a development deal from the video blog. Like, that is how big it became. And it wasn't about me, it was about the whole thing, the whole, like, everybody. And we were creating content, people were commenting, we were responding to the comments, and I was like, community. This is what it's all about, and that's still what it's about for me now, and what I'm doing now, which there's another panel on that you should come to tonight. But it's seeing how this community was so starved for representation, and I'm looking at mainstream Hollywood and going, y'all aren't doing this. No one is doing this right, and I did my best to do it right. You can only do so much with $15, but that's why, is because it wasn't there, and now we are getting there. And again, like I said, to see almost every TV show now has a queer character, usually a guy, but we're getting there. But then again, the ensemble shows that are coming up, it's starting to happen. It's starting to happen. But I still think I'm missing that community aspect that we had, that was going from like 2005 to like 2015. There was this very like palpable connection with the queer community, and I feel like to some degree we've sort of scattered to the winds a bit, and I would love to see it come back together a little bit more. and now especially that we do have more representation in mainstream TV and film, but like we're still, we still have a long way. Like I did a show last fall called Book of Queer, which was on Discovery Plus. If you haven't watched it, you really should. I, for years, have been saying, we need a show that educates our community about history, because a lot of our kids especially, you guys don't know what we went through, not we, the people well before me, the people whose shoulders I stand upon, all the way back. There's so much queer history that we have not been taught. And to be a part of a show where we're not only celebrating it, we're having fun with it, the entire cast and crew, I'm talking every single person on that set was queer. And it was incredible, like absolutely incredible. I mean, showrunners, the writers, the PAs, craft services, every single person on that. I mean, I walked into this set and I was like, holy fuck, this is a dream. Like I couldn't have asked for anything else. The majority of the cast members were like 25 and under. And of course, we're doing these skits, which are based on real history. And they're like, I had no idea. And I'm like, tell your friends, kids.
I'm still pissed I didn't get an audition for this.
Well,
So
they
anyway.
were looking for a Bex Taylor class.
Yes.
They were looking for a Bex type, so they couldn't take it.
So they didn't cast you.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I kind of got off track too, but I think I answered your question
Yes,
in a
you
roundabout way.
did, you did.
That did make me want to do like drunk history, but with only queer history.
That's
That's what this
basically what it
is.
is.
It's drunk.
That's what I wanna
It's
do.
drunk queer history.
That's amazing. I love this.
All right, there's got to be a season 2, Bex. You get your agent.
I officially submit my audition.
This whole panel.
I wanted to be on drunk history so bad for so many years.
Cameron, so I'm so glad you were here. Cameron surprised me by being an addition to this panel, but I'm thrilled because I love soap operas, and soap operas I think have been so important in a really kind of underground way when it comes to LGBT representation.
We were above ground for a long time.
Well, yes, you were above ground. But let's just say that soap operas are another world when it comes to. Okay, nobody got that. Okay.
I didn't even get it.
So talk. You talked a little bit in your first question about that world. So, and you've been in the industry for 2 decades. So. How have you watched your genre or your industry change? Maybe reluctantly at times or proactively at times?
I mean, I think the decision to have Mariah's, my character, her coming out story is so visceral and so shown in a step-by-step process about realizing her sexuality. I really appreciated how they did it, and I think it was a great, like you were saying, I've had so many people, whether it be on social media or in person, be like, you helped me discover my sexuality, or I was able to have this conversation with my grandma only because she watched soap. That's where, so I think it's a beautiful connector between old and new, because growing up, I mean, I had, and even now, I'll say oh, well, my job, I'm on a soap opera, and people are like, oh yeah, my grandma watches that, or so it's able to be, I think, whether it was intentional or not, it's able to be a beautiful connector between the people who have watched for decades. We're celebrating our 50th year. So there's a lot of opportunity there. I know it's not, it's not as visible as, primetime stuff, but I think it has a very important place in that conversation between different generations who might not understand each other. I mean, my story helped me discover my sexuality, and I was born and raised in Los Angeles, an actor, and I was like, oh, maybe there's a reason they made me, maybe I need to look at this. And I just knew
the pipeline from playing gay characters to being queer.
When there was a rumor going around on set, they were like, "Did you hear they're making someone gay?" And everybody was talking about who it was gonna be, and I was like, "It's gonna be me." They were like, "No, how do you know?" I was like, "I bet you 1,000% it's going to be me." And now I know why. So, if it can help me, literally as I'm doing it, as I'm acting out this story, then it absolutely can help, as many people that watch it that come to the table.
I mean, I think I utilized some of my characters to help figure out my own sort of issues. Absolutely.
Totally.
That's amazing. I like to joke that 2 out of 3 bomb girls. We got 2 out of 3 bomb girls out of this situation. That was a Canadian show. Okay. 2 bomb girls fans in the audience. Okay, so we mentioned this earlier on, and I want to talk about this. So there are 2 really big tropes when it comes to queer, trans, non-binary characters. One is the bury your gays trope, and another is the queer villain or trans villain role. So I want to talk about both of these because I think that things have really evolved for us over the years. And so, for instance, I'm thinking about Sandman. And you have the Corinthian.
Is there another panel separate for Sandman? Can we just talk about that?
The Corinthian, who is a villain, but not because he's queer. He's just a really scary dude who happens to like guys. Whereas, back, 10, 20 years ago, you had a villain who maybe was a villain because they were trans or because they were gay.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Silence of the Lambs, one of my favorite movies. Pretty problematic.
Yeah. So, do you think we have gotten to a point? So let's start with villains because I think it's a really interesting conversation. Do you think we're at a point where queer, trans, non-binary people can play villains and not have it be problematic? Apparently, Bex is very interested in playing a villain.
Yeah, villains are the most interesting. Right? They're the most interesting characters. When I was a kid, I was like, ooh, Jafar,
Scar.
Yeah, Scar. I'm like, yes, Scar.
Scar was hot.
Ursula.
Ursula is the hero. You cannot change my mind.
So it's, I'm hoping that's the point that we're at, right? I think it's as long as you don't make the character bad because they're in the LGBTQ community, they're just as long as it's just not that's the reason they're there. I think that's what's important.
But as long as it's not a feature of their villainy.
Yeah. And they're seducing people and eating their flesh or something. I don't know what else do. But and sorry, I'm from Indiana and my wife texted me. She's like, enunciate, babe.
Wait, you're from Indiana too?
Who are you? Fort Wayne.
Oh,
yeah, Indianapolis. Naptown, yeah. I'm sitting here
women from Indiana.
all mumbly and stuff.
There's 2 of us.
2 of us, woo, and 3, yeah.
3 of y'all.
All right. Yeah, but that's my take on it. I don't know. I feel like let's do it. I like being a villain. It's fun.
I keep getting asked, they sometimes set actors up on what they call general meetings with casting or with networks. And every time in those meetings, they ask you, well, what do you want to do? And I'm always like, I want to play a villain, or a Prince Charming, or maybe both. Maybe both. I don't know. A villain could be charming.
Villains often are, I think.
You have kind eyes. That's the problem. You can't play a villain. You can't.
I'm too bubbly.
You're too. No, it's your eyes.
That's where they suck us in though with the kind eyes.
Yeah, that's true.
Then they villainize.
Exactly. That's why I want one of those villains that I keep going back to Dungeons and Dragons, where it's the big bad evil guy was the favorite NPC the whole time, and the party just couldn't figure it out because they were like, oh, I like this guy. He's been killing your friends. That's the villain I want to play.
Yeah. I feel like it's also it also speaks to making sure that you have queer people behind the scenes so that it's authentic and that it's it's not just coding or it's not just used to check a box. And I think that's where you can see where queer people are writing for queer people, and so it's not problematic, if they're not being used just as the villain, they're being,
I was going to take it in a sort of a more casting direction. So when I was doing mainstream stuff, I almost entirely played villain characters, and I have a theory as to why this is a lot of the decision makers, maybe not as much anymore, but a lot of the, at least network back in my time were men. And I brought an energy that confused them, right? They didn't get my energy. And I did not have the same energy as, frankly, the straight actresses did. I did not bring flirtation or there's a different type of energy that
Big lesbian energy. You
yeah,
got big lesbian energy.
exactly. And so I'd walk into the room and they'd be like, "You're interesting. I don't quite know what to do.
You're not attracted to me. I don't
yeah,
understand
I know.
this."
So I did ask a producer in a film. I said, "Why? What is it?" And he's like, "You're just your energy's off." And I was like, "Because I didn't flirt with you?" And he said, "Yeah." And I was like, "There you go." So I think energy and casting has changed a lot now. Like my wife, who's in their age range, she almost entirely auditions. It's all virtual now. So that whole thing of where you go into a network session, which I don't know if you've done. Okay, so 30 network people sitting in a room where you have to walk in, and you as a human are taken into consideration a lot more than in a virtual casting session, right? You're not talking to them, like when you walk into these casting sessions, you have to shoot the shit and make them laugh or whatever. You don't have that as much anymore. So I think that's probably helpful, honestly, especially.
I think it's harmful. Because I think that because there are so many new people behind the scenes who are more open and less of like the old guard.
That, yes.
Like they
In that
want to
circumstance.
see your personality. I've had so many self-tapes where they're like, "Okay, but on the slate, can you tell us a story or why you
Yeah, they're starting to do that now.
And it's like, yes, because this is my only opportunity to show you who I am and who I can uniquely bring to this character that I'm showing you.
That's a good point. I mean, if you have the right people making the decision, I guess.
And I
it's a
think
good
that's
thing.
the other thing is
Right.
like that's what it keeps coming back to is we can have as many queer characters as we want in media, but it won't be good until we have more queer people behind the scenes as well.
Yep.
That's just me snapping.
Fascinating conversation. Actually, want to ask you all: are you ready for queer and trans and non-binary villains? Do you feel comfortable with it now? Because I wrote an article 8 years ago about the return of the queer villain, and people were pissed about it.
On Twitter, did you get attacked?
People were not happy with me. This is back when I worked at a site, well, I will not name. But yeah, people were not thrilled with that article.
Don't go on Twitter.
Oh,
I love Twitter.
that's where I built my empire.
Dumpster fire.
Yeah, somebody like recently posted or said something where it's like social media is where you go to be intentionally misunderstood by everybody.
Oh yeah,
That's accurate.
My assistant had to tell me not to tweet something today because I'm going to be on a panel and people might be like, "That's a weird thing to do on a day where you see people." But like, I just want to tweet things that confuse people sometimes, like nonsense. They make no sense. It's fun.
Keep them on their toes, Max. Okay, so we talked about villains. So let's talk about bury your gays and at the same time cancel your gays, which has come out of, we had bury your gays. Okay, 2016 was bury your gays. 2022 is cancel your gays. Okay, so bury your gays is still a really sensitive subject. I think it's like when we see a queer or trans or non-binary character be killed off, it's still really difficult for queer fans to absorb. And I feel almost as if we are just canceling shows now at a quicker rate than rather deal with complexities of like existing in this world as LGBTQ characters. I'd just really love to know what you all think of that. So, Katie, let's start with you since you're
so
down
many times on
there
TV.
and you're so far from me.
First of all, I thought you were saying barrier, and so this whole time I was like, I don't know what that is.
We're
And
very
I was like,
protective
I'm just-
gays. The
I
barrier
am
is
so uneducated about
Keeping gays.
Got it.
And that's my
Bury
fault
that
because I
term.
have a little bit of laryngitis. I apologize.
No.
Bury your gays.
Yeah. Okay, I've heard of that one. Yeah, sometimes I read the articles and I'm like, that person just moved on to a better show and they wanted to leave. And like, yeah, maybe you didn't have to kill them off, but like they had to leave at some point. Like they just wanted to leave. So there's like sometimes there's like something behind the scenes that's going on where the actor just wanted to opt out, and that was maybe what they wanted to do for their character, and it really doesn't need to be that whole big of a thing. But yeah, otherwise, like, it is. I don't even know what to say. Because yeah, sometimes it's one of the best ways for the character to go if they have to go. And then sometimes it's like, I don't know, are you killing them because they're gay? I don't know that that's ever the intent. So I'm a little like, I guess off to the side on it, because sometimes I know, like, for instance, in the 100, like, she got an offer to do a better show. Like, not a better show, it was a great, I loved the 100, but like,
You just lit a match, Katie.
I have so many things to say because of Clexa and also
I mean,
because
do you
of
know why this is called Clexicon?
but also the way that they did it with Clexa is like directly, spoiler alert, the same thing they did in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like stray
Killing
bullet took
Eve.
out, and Killing Eve, stray bullet from absolutely nowhere in terms of context of the show, comes out of nowhere and kills this warrior person who throughout the whole thing has been like deserving of, if they're gonna die, they better die grandly.
too badass to kill otherwise.
And I was one of the last queers to die before Clexa, and I died off camera.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you've been buried a couple times.
I've been buried, I got buried, like, I was one of, like, my character was, it was the first job I had, and my character was blatantly queer. It was awesome. And then I got the call saying, your character's gonna die. And this was like the last show that did this before Clexa did it, and Clexicon was born, and everyone was like, okay, fine, let's stop killing you, God. But I agree, like, if the death is spectacular and serves the story well, like, I wish that my character had gotten, like, a fight scene to go out.
Yeah.
Because the character's death did impact the story and impact other characters, and it was like, it was a good plot point. I just wish that it hadn't been like a, oh yeah, they're dead now, and you kind of see like a little remnant.
Are you talking about Bullet?
Maybe. Maybe little.
No, it's okay, it's not a spoiler alert.
Yes.
It's been out for 10 years.
Yes, it's been out for 10 years, yes. But yeah, it was hard because I remember getting the call from the showrunner and being like, does this serve the story? Does Bullet go down fighting? These were my 2 requirements. The only requirement I wish I'd also said was, can they die on camera? Can we see their fight? Can we see them put up the fight, not just be like told they put up a fight in dialogue? Like that was the biggest problem for me with that particular death, was exactly this character deserves a more glorious end.
I already died on camera, so try to kill me again. I play my twin. Yes! I already died once on the show. Try to kill the other twin, I dare you. There's a triplet, I guarantee you.
I would say that Killing Eve was a big, now listen, I understand it's about an assassin, but to do it like literally moments after they finally have sex is like...
It's what happens every time.
Moment of joy, death. Yeah, that's the formula.
The queer person finally gets some sort of happiness, and then they are punished for their happiness.
Right, it's usually queer happiness that they experience.
Well, and
like not just happiness, queer.
the writer, the showrunner of that season, who happens to have a name very similar to my wife, who
that's right.
oh my god, this was insane. So Laura Neal was the showrunner for the final season of Killing Eve. My wife is Lauren Neal, but she's verified, so she got attacked.
On Twitter, what it's a mess for her.
But see, the thing is Lauren is a massive Killing Eve fan and was just as pissed off as everybody else was. So she's like, hold up, y'all, I am not that person. In fact, I like, she's wearing a t-shirt with Jodie Comer's face on it today, so you'll be able to find her. We were so fucking mad. I was like, are you kidding? I mean, we were like, what? Are you kidding? And then she comes out of the water and she screams and it says the end, and I was like, I'm gonna find this bitch, I'm gonna kill her. How dare you do this?
We're not
to
killing
us.
anyone.
So I'm
Got a pinata over there with more.
I have a lot of anger around this. I'm gonna wrap this up by saying this. If you want to see your queer characters not die, you need to support queer content makers, right? I want, yes, all good that we're now in mainstream media. Keep supporting those characters, but you need to support your queer creators if you want to see this trend end. Because I promise you, we're not going to do that.
There's a weird trick, because everything's on streaming now, just play it and let it play all the way through. Let it play on like your favorite queer media. Let it play on like autoplay next.
Get the numbers up.
Well, right, like, let's talk about this though, because this is important. This goes into the cancel your gays.
Yeah.
I think fans are feeling burnt out.
Yeah.
I think fans are feeling frustrated.
Yeah.
Fans are supporting. Fans are they're buying billboards, they're
They're going
tweeting their
above and
asses off, but still they're watching shows like First Kill, which we see being #1 on Netflix, get canceled.
And it wasn't even advertised. That's the thing.
Right. So like, what do you tell fans? I'm sorry, you did everything you possibly could, but your show's still getting canceled. Like why do you think, like, as people in the industry, why do you think we have had such an unprecedented amount of shows with queer, like especially female leads, just get chopping block this year?
Misogynistic capitalism.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you get when, like, 3 companies own everything and
they're
one
run by
person
men.
gets to make that decision, and it's purely financially based. Like, it's all so that they get a tax cut and they get a tax break.
And they don't get their
no
rock-
vested interest.
They don't get their jollies off to queer women. No. So they're not going to keep those shows going because they're not the target audience, so it doesn't matter how many other people are watching and enjoying. They don't want it, they'll get rid of it.
I'm gonna say this, and I'm shilling the 6 o'clock panel. It's about this, guys. My wife is a data scientist. When we're telling you this is financially motivated, it's 100% financially motivated. They have so many data points on what we're watching. I know it feels like these shows are huge hits. I'm not saying that it wasn't. When you take the budget of a project like First Kill, compare it to like Heartbreaker, for example, which I know was shot maybe in 2 weeks. I know Olivia Colman's scenes were shot in 1 weekend. We're talking a massive difference in budget. And then they're looking at data points that you're not even thinking about. I mean, these companies own you. They own you. And that's why our projects keep getting canceled on mainstream media. As much as we feel like something is a big hit, I'm not suggesting that we stop watching mainstream media. I'm saying that they only care about money. That is it. So again, support A League of Their Own. Support the queer characters who are putting stuff on mainstream media and are doing it independently. Because that is the only way we're gonna continue to be able to make this content, and for those networks to see that there is an audience out there for it. But I promise you, they're canceling this stuff because it's not getting the views that we feel it's getting, right?
And even if it is, at the end of the day, that's even less to the finances. Like if they have a show that's a bottleneck show like Heartstopper, they shoot it all in like 3 locations, they can do that really quickly. If they have First Kill that's shot all over the place with all these wild, wonderful things, we love to watch it. It's visually stunning. It's a lot harder for production to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, Neil Gaiman just had to tweet out like, hey, can you play Sandman over and over and over and then start it again, and then, because that's what they're looking at. It doesn't matter if it's
telling you
number-
you and I should watch their show.
It doesn't matter. I mean, it's the #1 show like all over the world right now, and it might not matter.
Yeah.
It might, and he's acknowledging it. He's like, it might not matter to get a 2nd season. You know.
Katie, I want to hear from you because I could see you were trying to get in there.
Well, it's not even just LGBT shows that are getting hit. It's BIPOC shows too. I mean, just like this whole Discovery HBO merger has been absolutely insane.
Chronicles?
My wife worked on Gordita Chronicles. It's one of those things that it's purely financial. It's purely for a tax write-off, and it actually has because the numbers were good on the show, like really, really good. It has nothing to do with that sometimes. It's just like, I want a tax write-off, I'm just canning this show. And we're canning all the family department, we're canning all of this department. And you saw it like Gentrified on Netflix, or to get bubblegum made, she had to basically do it herself. You know, I'm starting to be like, do I even want to do streaming? But what's my other choice?
Yeah.
You know?
Independent, that's what you do.
Yeah, basically.
We just have to make it sustainable,
Well,
you know?
Right, so I'm sorry, I was supposed to turn this over to the audience, I'm so sorry, and we only have a couple minutes, maybe, how many minutes we have? None? We have none?
No minutes.
Oh, shit. Left. Okay. Something I want to put in all your heads, and if you happen to see, and if you're open to it, and you guys are walking around, and we all get a chance to talk about this, where did web series go?
Right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
That was where LGBT media was really finding its voice, and when's the last time you were able to find?
Well, now
a
it's
queer
only
website?
utilized as a way to sell something else. It's a way, a proof of
So,
concept.
so basically, we had this platform, and it's been, taken over by capitalism. So that's something I want to talk to you guys about at some point. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
all of you for just and being so open and talking about this. This is important. They're all doing such incredible work, and I'm so proud of all of you, and I can't wait to see you in your next projects and just thrive. So thank you all. See you very soon on the next panel.
Thank you, Dana.